In this video I'm going to show you how much the GT350 depreciates per year and per 1000 miles driven. Furthermore, I will show you what the forecasted prices are, what a fair purchasing price is for a GT350, and how these depreciation numbers compare them to some other cars like the Porsche 911 and the Corvette C7. So let's get started. This video is by the way suggested by Bacon Pizza, and that of course also means that you can request a video simply by commenting the name of the car which you would like to see featured down below in the comment section. Remember then to subscribe and to hit the notification bell so you get notified when your requested video goes live. Let's have a look now to the GT350 market, but before we dive into the details we first take a broad market perspective and we will have a look to the price distributions over there. At the top you can see the price distribution for the full market, and below that distribution we have the same distribution but split by the new and the used cars. But let's start now first by having a look to the full market. First of all, we can see that there are 1,719 cars for sale and that these have an average price point of $75,785. And this only includes the standard GT350, as the R version is not included in the histogram and is also not included in all of the statistics which you will see in the rest of this video. If we have a closer look to the prices then we can see that prices already start at around $40,000 but stretch up all the way to $115,000. Moving then a histogram down, then we can see the split between the used cars sold by dealers, and the new cars. And we can see immediately that the market is predominantly made up out of new cars, as there are 1,292 new cars for sale. And that is, especially relatively, quite a high number. And of course, these new cars are a lot more expensive than the used cars. In fact, the premium you pay for a new car is around $17,000. So I think we have now a pretty good idea of what the price points are for a 350. So let's move on to the depreciation per year with that graph over there. On the horizontal axis we have now the model year, and on the vertical axis we have the price. Each of the blue bubbles which you see represents a car for sale in today's market, and the blue solid line going through the graph represents the depreciation line. Also, if you look closely to the graph you can see that there are some black axes in the graph, and these axes show the average price point for that given model year. Now if I put that graph on the big screen, then you can see that the average depreciation per year is $6,761. Or in other words, the average depreciation per year for a GT350 is around 10% of the new price of a car. Now you can see of course that the depreciation line over here is actually not a curve, but still a straight line. And the reason for this is very simple. It is namely so that for all of the cars for sale in today's market, a straight line as a depreciation line simply represents the depreciation per year the best. There is however one key thing which we need to consider here, and that is the fact that all of the cars from model year 2020 are of course new cars, but also that the majority of the cars from model year 2019 are new cars. And these new cars, which are now distributed over two and not one model year as normally is the case, are simply skewing the depreciation line. Therefore I removed the cars from model year 2020, and that is shown in the plot over there. And now you can see that the depreciation line actually starts to look like a depreciation curve, as you can see a slight bottom in the curve. So let's have a look to that graph and to some more numbers. You can see now that the total decrease for the known lifespan of a GT350 is $20,958. And I got this number by taking the average price point for a new car and then deducting from that the average price point for the cars with model year 2016. Now if we look to the slope of the depreciation curve, then we can see that this impact of $20,958 is of course not evenly distributed over the years. The largest decrease you can find of course in the first year of ownership. We can see that the GT350 is decreasing there with an average of $12,700. And out of the total depreciation of $20,958, this is then again 60% which you are taking in the first year of ownership. If we look then a bit further down the depreciation curve, then we can see that the curve is actually curling slightly upwards at the end. This however doesn't mean that the prices are going up, it's simply curving up because there are only a few cars with model year 2015 for sale, and those simply happen to be priced at the top end of the price range. Now all of those numbers are of course nice, but they don't really mean anything without a context. I mean, are these numbers high or are they low? That's why I also compared them to three other cars, two obvious and one perhaps a bit less obvious. And that comparison you can see popping up over here. We can see that in blue we still have the depreciation curve for the GT350, but that next to that we have now an orange depreciation curve for the Porsche 911 991, and that next to that we have the depreciation curve for the Corvette C7 Z06. Finally, all the way at the end, we have now also then the depreciation curve for the Corvette C7. And let me put those graphs on the big screen so you can see what's going on. If we first have a look to the 911, then we can see that especially for the newer cars, the price points are not really aligned with the GT350. The 911 991 is simply the more expensive car over here. You can however also see from the slope of the 911's depreciation curve that the average absolute depreciation is also significantly higher than the one for the GT350. You can see that the 991 depreciates on average $7,701 per year, making the depreciation rate around $1,000 higher than the depreciation rate for a GT350. If we have a look then to the two Corvettes, then we can actually see that they both fall in the price range of the GT350. Now the Z06 of course falls more towards the top end of the GT350 price range, but we can see that the depreciation per year for a Z06 is however slightly lower. The Z06 is namely depreciating at a rate of, on average, $5,132 per year. If we look then to the C7, then we can see of course that this car is priced more towards the lower end of the GT350's price range. The depreciation of that car is however the lowest of all of the cars displayed on the screen. The C7 is namely depreciating at a rate, on average, at $3,207 per year. Now when comparing the depreciation rates between these cars, we of course need to remember that we are looking to the average numbers. And these numbers are very much affected by the range of the model years which is available. Now for the 991 this effect is of course relatively high because there are many more model years available when compared to the GT350. Now for the Corvettes this effect is relatively small because there are only 1 to 2 additional model years available. Now if you want to know more about any of the other cars, then I strongly recommend that you check out my depreciation analysis for those cars. And I will make sure to put the link for those videos in the description so you can find them easily. Now before we can say anything about the future prices of a GT350, we of course also need to consider the second most important aspect which is affecting the price of a car, the mileage. And we're going to do that with the depreciation per 1000 miles graph over here. You can see that on the horizontal axis we have now the mileage instead of the model year, and that on the vertical axis we still have the price. If we have a quick look then to the mileage range, we can see indeed that the majority of the cars have 0 miles driven. Hence, they are new cars. The cars with the most mileage have then a mileage of around 50,000 miles. Now if I put this graph again on the big screen, you can see that the average depreciation per 1000 miles driven is $1,074. You can however also see that there's of course a huge difference between the new and the used cars. Now just as with the depreciation per year, you can of course also see here that the largest hit is taken in the first few miles. And that is exactly why it's also a good idea to have a look to the graph popping up now on your screen. You can see that we are still looking to the depreciation per 1000 miles graph, but that the cars are now colored according to what type of car it is. You can see that we have the normal used cars, the used cars for sale at dealers, and the new cars. And here we can see now very clearly that after 10,000 miles, the depreciation starts to decrease significantly. In fact, for a used car, the average depreciation per 1000 miles driven is then also only $360. Alright then, we know now what the depreciation per year is and what the depreciation per 1000 miles is. So that means that we have enough information to make the forecasted prices. And to do that, I inputted the effect of the depreciation per year and the depreciation per 1000 miles driven to a statistical model, and the results of that model are shown over here. You can see that in blue we still have the depreciation curve for the GT350, but then in orange we have now the forecasted price points. And each orange point represents a forecasted price for a car with a different mileage. And these mileage points start at 5,000 miles and stretch then up to 35,000 miles, with an interval of 5,000 miles. Now of course we can see that the car from model year 2016 with only 5,000 miles driven is predicted to have the highest price. If we look a little bit closer, then we can see that this car is predicted to have a price of $53,941. If we look then to the forecast for a 2016 car with the highest mileage, so 35,000 miles, then we can see that this car is of course priced the lowest. Now if we compare these cars then to cars from model year 2016 but with a similar mileage, then we can see that the drop in average price point is actually relatively low. And this is in line with the market developments you can see for the older cars. We saw namely that the slope of the depreciation curve was decreasing, and hence that the average depreciation per year was going down. In fact, the decrease in average price point between cars with model year 2017 and cars with model year 2016 is only around $3,000. It is then also that the drop in prices between model year 2016 and the forecasted price points is almost the same as the drop between model year 2017 and model year 2016. And to sum it up, it means that you can of course still expect some depreciation, but that these numbers are, especially in a relative context, not so high anymore. Now, after seeing this video, you are convinced that the GT350 is the car for you. What would be then a fair purchasing price? And you guessed it, that is exactly what we're going to have a look at now. And to figure out the fair purchasing prices, I inputted the price, the model year and the mileage to a machine learning algorithm which shows us if a car is following the normal market dynamics or not. And the rationale behind this is that if a car follows the normal market dynamics for a GT350, it's priced fairly. If it doesn't follow the normal market dynamics, then it means that the car is either over or underpriced. Now let's have a look to the result, and that is shown in the 3D plot over there. You can see that we've indeed now model year, price and the mileage, and that each car is again represented by a bubble. The bubbles are however now colored, and the darker the bubble, the more likely it is that that car is following the normal market dynamics. Now I will put this graph on the big screen, and then you can see quite good what's going on. You can see now that the green bubbles are most likely to follow the normal market dynamics and therefore have a fair purchasing price. If we inspect the price range then we can see that a fair purchasing price lays between $45,000 and $55,000. And if we rotate the graph a bit, that these cars need to have a mileage of less than 15,000 miles. If we have a look into the cars which don't have a fair purchasing price, so the white bubbles, then we can see that these basically consist out of two categories. On the right hand side over here, you can see that these white bubbles basically represent the new cars. You can see however that they represent the new cars which are priced significantly higher than the average price for a new car. If we have a look into the second group of white bubbles, then we can see that these represent of course the used cars. They however represent the used cars for which the price is not aligned with the mileage. You can see namely that if we move down on the price axis, that the mileage is increasing quite severely, but that the price is not decreasing anymore proportionally. And as a result, for this price range there are simply cars available to you which have a lot lower mileage than the cars which are colored white over here. And that again of course does then mean that you get a better value for money car. Now with that conclusion we arrive at the end of this video. Now from a depreciation perspective, and personally, I wouldn't put my money into a new GT350. The depreciation in the first year of ownership is namely quite steep, and we saw that for the older model years there's quite a nice bottoming pattern in the depreciation curve. Furthermore, when we look to the forecasted prices, we also saw that the forecasted depreciation is not so high anymore. Furthermore, if you will analyze the market for the GT350 for a certain period of time, and you take the mileage, the price, the model year and the options into account, then you will find that there are still quite some good buying opportunities out there. Now if you find this video useful, please support the channel by smashing that like button. It of course takes a lot of work and research to put these videos together, so a like is highly appreciated. I will see you then next week again for a new depreciation analysis, and in the meantime you can check out some other videos like the one for the Corvette C7 over here or the one for the Porsche 911 over here.